Steve Wakelam. Steve's a personal trainer based out of Melbourne, Victoria. Steve's here today. We're going to be discussing the five strategies to adopt a warrior mentality during cancer treatment. So Steve's one of the best people to talk to about this. Him and I first crossed paths a couple of years back through a mutual friend. And Steve went through his own cancer treatment journey back in 2013. I feel like we sort of crossed paths together at a time that was meant to be. Personally, I was going through some professional development in terms of exercise for the management of cancer. And it just so happened to meet Steve, and we sort of collaborated a little bit on creating a program to help people through their own journey through cancer, not only through the treatment period, but also, in the aftermath, picking up the pieces, becoming more physically active, fitter, stronger, and sort of getting back to their more normal selves. And a big part of that has been looking at how we can create a program to help people through that journey. So not only through physical activity, which is a huge part, and we're seeing more and more research come about through, why it's so important to remain active during that primary therapy. So whether that's chemo, hormone replacement treatment, immunotherapy, but also, afterwards to get back to full fitness and full wellness. Really hit it off with Steve from that first time we caught up. And a huge part of Steve's journey was remaining so physically active and keeping his strength up during his cancer treatment and going through chemo. And such a big part of that was not just being physically active, which, they say avoid a rest strategy during cancer treatment. It's so important to remain active and mobile and try to do as much exercise as the body will allow, and that will change so much day to day. But that's easier said than done, isn't it? So it's going to come back to what the mentality is to get yourself up out of bed on those dark days and spend 5 minutes walking if that's all you can do, or on the better days maybe make it to the gym and do 30 or 45 minutes of resistance training. So what we're going to be talking about today is 5 strategies to adopt a warrior mentality to get you through your cancer treatment, get you through to the other side, and get you well again. So thanks, Steve, for joining us today. It's great to see you.
Oh, thanks for having me on.
So we can dive straight into the first of the 5 strategies. If you want to share anything before that about your journey and where you're at the moment. I know you sort of regard going through what you went through back in 2013 as something that happened for a reason. And I think that's a huge thing to have accepted that at the time. Which is so admirable, and it's something, I suppose, anyone who hasn't been through cancer might find hard to understand. But I suppose that was a huge part of you creating that mentality for yourself from the get-go.
Well, it certainly is a challenge at the time to take that on, and that's where one of the points I wanted to discuss today was just the area of having that faith. But whenever you're going through something, it's very difficult to see that, well, maybe this is a good thing in my life, or maybe this is for a purpose or a reason. When you're going through it, you just feel like, well, this is all bad. Why is this happening? This isn't part of the plan that I had for my life. And, I think whenever we come out of something, well, then it's easier to reflect on it and see that, there is good ththings about it, and it has been for a purpose. And that's where, if you're listening to me sharing about this now, you might be thinking, oh, well, it's fine for him to say that, he's through it, but I believe that it's a real important thing to try, and it's not an easy one, but to try and have that view from the start, like when you're in it, when you're going through it, is to kind of take in that faith to believe, well, even though I don't understand that, I don't know what's going on, it all seems bad, I'm going to try to believe that there is a purpose to it, there is, like, it is for a reason, it is going to make me a better person coming through it. And even having the belief that, yeah, you are going to get through it is obviously a massive one in itself.
Yeah.
So yeah. It's been quite a few years for me, since being through that journey.
Mm-hmm.
And as Luke explained, it's kind of, the way I see it is, you kind of got two different journeys in a way, well, as far as my experience anyway. So the first journey that I kind of went through, I was more just a survival mode, going through that initial, or for me, it was going through loads of chemotherapy and whatnot, but a lot of time in hospital. And it was kind of like, I felt like I was kind of fighting on the battlefield, so to speak, talking about that warrior mentality. But through that period, it was like, that's the time I'm just fighting to get through this, trying to live through it and come out the other side. But then it was a whole nother journey once you've come through that, because it's almost like, well, no one really cares now. Everyone knows you're through it. You're fine. You're going to live. You're going to make it, and all the doctors are all happy with you, and you're not spending much time in hospital, if not any, now, just for checkups, and it's kind of like it's all done. It's over with. But then you got to find your feet back in life again. You got to figure out, well, what's all this mean? Why did I go through this, and what's my life mean now, and what is my purpose, and what I'm going to do, and how to adjust back into kind of how to reinvent yourself now after this whole journey. And I think that's part of that probably isn't talked about enough. And for me personally, it was a part that I struggled with, probably more so in some ways than going through that first bit.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I have
definitely a lot to it, but sorry.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt, Steve. I have seen that quite a bit actually with cancer survivors. It's such an upheaval to their life. It sort of becomes all they're used to for such a portion of time, being in hospital, the constant treatment, and then picking up the pieces afterwards and kind of being, left to their own sort of to get on with things, I suppose, can be such a challenge too. So yeah, like you say, it probably doesn't get that much airtime, but it's a big consideration too. So if we look at the 5 strategies that you did sort of create, that you adopted, that you fostered, and that you, I suppose, had to work on, these just weren't 5 strategies that, just presented themselves and you just sort of ran with it. This was something that you consciously created for yourself and had to work on every day. So I'd love you to just to summarize each of the 5, and then we'll come back to number 1 and work through them one by one.
Cool. Yeah, so the first one is, and I'll just share a brief story around it, because this is how it kind of, I was challenged with this mindset. Is I rang up a friend of mine who is like a success coach, and he'd done a lot of mentoring with me and whatnot. And anyway, I rang him at the time when I was in hospital, and he didn't know that I was in that situation. Hadn't spoken to him for a while. And he was just, he didn't really say much on the phone as I was telling him the situation I was in. I was in hospital and all the rest. And then finally he spoke, and he just goes, Steve, firstly, now's not the time to be sad. No, don't be sad about this. Now's not the time to feel bad about any of this. Now's your time to step up. And this is where that kind of warrior mindset came from, that got that in my mind of, he kind of told me that. He said, look, you got to be a warrior now. You got to step up. You're on the battlefield, and you got to fight. So to me, that's sort of where it started for me, in terms of, okay, I've got to take this seriously. Like, I've got to get in that mindset of I'm on this battlefield. Like I've been preparing for this, and now here I am. Yeah. So I kind of got this mental picture of a battlefield, or a warrior, like a samurai warrior or whatever it is on the battlefield. It's like, it's like in that moment, if you think of any soldier in that kind of position, that they can't be sitting there thinking about how bad this is and it's not fair, and I'm feeling so sad that I'm in this situation. It's like, no, that's where they've got to step up and truly take on every bit of strength they've got and stay mentally strong to actually fight through. So that's the first one for me that really challenged me, that, hey, this is my time. I've got to actually step up here. And from there, the next point that I feel strongly about is, again, one that I was challenged with when I was in hospital initially, was taking responsibility. And that's kind of, I believe, easier said than done when you're in a situation like that. It's like taking like full responsibility for everything in your life, meaning that not to say that it's not kind of the mindset of, oh well, everything wrong in my life is my fault and I should beat myself up for that. It's more that just accepting that, well, no one else is to blame here. There's no other, I can't put the blame onto anything else except for myself, that I've somehow attracted or created where I am and everything around me, and exactly everything in my life is I'm responsible for. And it's not kind of the mindset to get you down and feeling like, yeah, I'm to blame here. It's more like it gives you that power. Once you can take that responsibility, I learned that, well, now you're not going to sit there and bitch about it. You're not going to say that it's someone else's fault, or think about why it's not fair. You're just going to say, well, I'm responsible, so now I've got the power to do something about it and move on from it and actually get through this. So yeah, I feel like that's a really empowering kind of mindset to take on, but it's not so easy to get to that.
With that
And
one,
then
with that one, Steve, did you wholeheartedly believe that, or did you sort of create that mindset just because it was going to be tying in with that warrior mentality? If you know what I mean.
yeah, I'd say the second one. I didn't know what caused cancer in my body. I didn't know, I didn't know what it was. And the doctors were saying, look, it's just one of those things. Cancer doesn't discriminate. You don't know who's going to get it and this and that. And they kind of, I think that kind of conversation makes it easier to fall into that victim mentality.
Yeah.
So I see it like either you've got the choice to take full responsibility for it, and therefore you have power over it to do something, or if you don't, then you just fall into that victim mentality, and that there's a whole load of behaviors that kind of follow that, and it doesn't lead to a good place, I believe. So yeah, I didn't know, I didn't know whether there was anything particular that I'd done to get my body into a position where it wanted to create cancer and kill itself virtually. But I kind of believed, I kind of just, took on the mindset that, okay, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it was an outside source. I don't know if it was myself that had done something lifestyle-wise that had created this, or I don't know what it is. But regardless, I'm going to just accept that it's me, because it can't be anyone else, really.
Yeah.
So yeah, and
helped you to take that full ownership of the situation.
Yeah, exactly. That's more of what it's about.
With that comes that empowerment, I suppose, to do everything you can from that moment onwards to increase your chances of making through it.
Yeah, and I mean, it was a challenge for me because I read it in the book, and I'll explain later, but I basically read it and I was really challenged with this mindset. And once I really grasped the concept and took that on, it was really like, it was like a massive weight off my shoulders in a way.
Yeah.
Like you would think it would be the opposite, taking responsibility is like taking a massive weight on. But for me, it was really empowering to me. It's like, yeah, this is up to me now.
Yeah.
I can do this. And a friend of mine at the time I was having a conversation with him about this, and he was like, well, yeah, it's all on you, but you've got the access to all the doctors and the helpers and different resources and whatnot, but it's up to you to actually manage all of that.
Yeah.
So it's kind of the mindset of like most people would say to their doctor, hey doctor, how are you going to fix me? Whereas it's more the mindset of saying, hey doctor, tell me how I can fix myself.
Yeah.
Kind of taking that ownership onto it. So
yeah, how can I fix myself? And how can you and your team help me to do this as best as possible?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Rather than saying, well, I'm just a victim, you'd better fix me. After kind of accepting that responsibility is also accepting that it's going to be a bloody hard journey. there's nothing easy about it. And I mean, cancer. And another quick story. So I had a trainer, expert, a strength coach who was helping me at the time, and he'd written out a bit of an exercise program for me to do once I got out of hospital. And once I got out of hospital after the first month or so, I was able to come home, and I had a couple of weeks in between each treatment. So a week or so had passed, and he emailed me and said, "Oh, how's your gym program going that I see you?" And I just wrote back to him. I'm like, "Mate, I've been absolutely feeling terrible. Yeah, and I haven't been able to start the program yet. I haven't been able to train. So yeah, but I'm planning to get into it next week." And then he writes back to me straight away, and he just says, no sympathy at all. He just says, "Steve, you have cancer. You're going to have a lot of days where you feel absolutely shocking. You're going to have a lot of bad days, but you got to do it. Like, training is your medicine. You just have to do it." And that did something in me, that it made me realize, of course, who am I kidding? Of course it's going to be hard. Of course I'm going to be feeling shit at times. And that's not an excuse. It kind of gave me that mindset that, yeah, this is going to be a really hard thing. There's going to be days where I'm going to be really struggling to do anything, to even get out of bed. But I know that. So therefore I got to still do it. So once I kind of had that mindset shift, I never missed a workout. I never, I mean, some workouts, some days, I'd get to the gym, or whether it was going for a walk or whatever, I had that for that day, and I could basically do hardly anything. But the fact is, I got there and did what I could. But the thing is, I found that once I kind of accepted that it's going to be hard, you kind of rule out that excuse. And it actually makes it easy. It doesn't make it easy to do the thing, but it makes it easy to make the decision. Because when you wake up in the morning and you're just feeling like you can't even possibly get out of bed, let alone drag yourself to do a workout or whatever it is that you got to work on that day, it's like, well, that's not an excuse anymore, because you knew that you're going to have days like that. It's going to be hard. So I think a lot of the time is, if you don't expect it to be hard, well then, you're going to wake up on those days and think, "Oh, no, it's too hard today. I can't do it." So just having the mindset of accepting that this is going to be the hardest thing you've ever done in your whole entire life. So again, it's like, that could come across as like a real negative mindset. That's not a great thought to have. "Oh, this is going to be the worst time of my life. It's going to be really bad. It's going to be hard." But in another way of looking at it, it's actually more empowering, because it's like, well, yeah, it takes away all of those excuses. And when you have the days that, when you're expecting that tomorrow is going to be the hardest day of your life, you're going to be feeling the worst you've ever had, and then you wake up and you're actually not feeling that bad, and things aren't too hard, well, you're feeling pretty good, because your expectations were like, it's going to be harder than it is. So that's something that really helped me anyway, in that mindset. And
sorry to interrupt again, Steve. Did that give you did that give you real confidence, when you tackled those real, dark days when you felt physically exhausted, mentally depleted, that the days on those days when you did get up, and even if it was, going for a 10-minute walk or just doing whatever activity you could do on those days, did that give you confidence to tackle other days that, might be similar to that, or even slightly worse as well?
Absolutely. I think from memory, I think I just really, kind of had the expectation that, well, some days are going to be whatever hard days I had. One of the great things that wasn't great at the time, but it really helped my journey, is that I had an absolute terrible time at the start. So that when I first got admitted into hospital, things were really bad. And those, particularly the first week, but particularly those first couple of days, I just experienced, times where, that was just the worst of it. It kind of couldn't get worse. So I kind of had that as a bit of a marker. So any days that, things were just, there was days where I certainly struggled, probably more so mentally, but I could kind of revert it back to to the earlier days I'd had, and I'm like, well, I got through those times, so I know that I'm going to get through this day.
Yeah.
And that's, yeah, that's another part of it too. With that is like, yes, this is hard, but this is just hard for this particular period in time, and I
Yeah.
just got to get through this period in time. And that goes into the next point 4 I had, which is committing to do the work to keep your mindset strong, to keep your kind of mental state strong.
Okay.
And I think that's one thing that I find people don't probably think of much. Like, we think of doing the work in the gym or our physical, our physical recovery and rehab work. But often we don't think of it like in terms of our mental game. We don't think of that in terms of working at it. We just think, well, some days you're going to be feeling really great, some days you're going to be feeling really down, and that's just how life goes. And that, to some extent, is just the way things are. But the cool thing is that we can. There is plenty of things we can do to change that state around. So when you do get up in the morning and you just are feeling super overwhelmed with everything, you're feeling just really down and out, and all you can kind of see is negativity, and you just, yeah, it's just stopping you from doing anything. Yeah, there's a lot of things that you can do that can actually turn that around. So the fourth point is about really committing to working on yourself. So whenever you are feeling that way, or you're committing yourself to saying, you know what, I'm not going to stay in those positions. I'm going to fight and actually get myself out of that.
Yeah. So making that promise to yourself at some stage of your journey to keep working on that. And is that, so examples of that, Steve, is that like, for example, writing down, adopting a gratitude journal where you can just write some stuff down that you are thankful for? Or is that like having those strong sort of networks like you've already mentioned, and speaking to them daily? What are some sort of examples of that?
So I kind of see it in 2 ways. So there's a bunch of things we can do that just, if we're doing these things consistently, they're going to obviously help us to stay in a good mental state. For example, having great friends around that can, that are positive and can laugh with you and whatnot. That's going to, obviously, if you're hanging out with people who are depressed, they're not going to make you feel good. But yeah, as you said, doing your journaling and writing down what you're grateful for, if you get in the habit of that, and that becomes, to start with, it's a discipline because you've got to force yourself to kind of do it, but it becomes a daily habit that you can write down some things that you're grateful for each day. That actually changes the way your brain starts to think, and you naturally start to naturally sort of think more positively. It gets easier to think about what you're grateful for. Whereas at the start, when you start that, it might be hard to think about. It's like, what am I grateful for? I don't know. It all looks bad, but it kind of trains your brain in that way. And like I mentioned, your physiology, just changing the way that you're standing or sitting or getting up and getting moving in the morning, and that can make a huge difference. And that's why we feel so good when we exercise, because we're getting into great posture and we're moving and getting things going. So for myself, I've found that the physiology is probably the biggest one, and that's kind of the quickest thing that can change that mindset. So I think on sort of 2 levels. So on one level, there's things we want to do consistently every day that we're working on. So you're committed to working on those things every day, like your journaling and jotting down your gratitudes, and making sure that you've got a good influencer of people around you, making sure that you're reading good positive material, or watching, being aware of what you're feeding yourself with, whether it be music or TV shows or movies, making sure that it's stuff that's actually empowering to you. You'll get better and better. It's kind of like with practice, right? You get better and better at being able to pick yourself back up and get back into that positive mindset. And I know for me, you hear a lot of people talking about, positivity and a lot of this kind of, Tony Robbins stuff and different self-help and all the rest. And people see it like it's all bullshit, because there's no way you can constantly stay positive. Like you have, life is all about ups and downs, and you have to feel you have to feel sad sometimes, and you can't always just be totally positive all the time and feeling great.
Yeah.
And I agree with that, but I also know that and believe that it's when you do get times that aren't so great, you can pull yourself out of that, and you can certainly have a lot more of your life staying up and positive, and seeing that side of it, and training your brain more and more to actually, yeah, see the positive thing in things quicker,
Yeah.
and therefore feeling better through it.
Well, yeah, it's such a good point because I mean, yeah, we do look at how we train our bodies so much, but we don't discuss or talk about how we can train our mental state that much. So
Yeah,
yeah, it's a
that's a
huge,
massive.
huge aspect. So that's number 5, Steve. Faith. You just mentioned
Yes,
it
yeah,
then.
no, yeah,
Yeah.
leads into that. So yeah, like I was saying before, is when you're in the middle of it, you don't know what's going on. You don't know why this thing's happened to you, or why you're in this situation, and you might be hearing different things like about success rates, or what could possibly happen, or like as in the negative side of things, or there might be a risk of not making it through this, or
Yeah.
all this stuff you hear. And it's like, even if the prospect was, okay, this is terrible, this is the worst possible thing ever, I still think it's possible to, well, I know it is because I know people who have taken this approach of like, you know what, even if it hasn't been successful for anyone else before me, I'm going to be the first person. I'm going to be the first. I'm going to get through this. This is a great thing, in some way. And I think that's a really good thing to have that belief of it. Different for everyone, I'm sure, but I think that having that faith that, hey, look, no matter how dark this situation may look, I have the faith that this is for a purpose in my life. There's a bigger reason here. I'm going to grow through it. It's going to make me stronger. It's going to make me a better person. And yeah, there's nothing bad about this. One thing I really learned is, just because something's really hard or difficult or even uncomfortable doesn't mean it has to be bad. So like, even if you've got the most uncomfortable day you've ever experienced, you might have, a day where you've been the most emotionally stressed, anxious, feeling depressed, going through the most physical trauma ever. That day can still be a great day. And that's a really powerful thing to understand, and to grasp that concept of that. Once you kind of take that mindset on, there's kind of nothing that can stop you.
Yeah.
You're kind of saying, well, no matter what comes at me, I'm going to make this a great day.
Make it through it. Yeah. Just builds that resilience. I know when you push the boundaries of your comfort zone, that's when you can really feel like you grow as an individual. Things that almost scare you to an extent, you make it through that, and you're like, that sort of added another brick to my foundation, kind of thing. Feeling stronger as a result. So
exactly.
Yeah.
And look, what if we've got time? Just one other thing I wanted to make mention of is, I was talking about that whole kind of victim mentality that is really easy to fall into. Taking responsibility is like, once you kind of take that, you're choosing a really difficult pathway for the whole journey. So you're choosing that, yeah, I'm going to have to work. I'm going to have to, apply myself, and it's not easy. Taking that victim mentality is really easy. It's really comfortable. Now, I talk about my journey of cancer a bit, but I try as much as possible to talk about it in a good way, what it's done for me, what I've learned from it, and not in a way of, hey, feel sorry for me because I've been through this and it was really hard. One thing I've learned about telling a story, one, you're reliving that whole thing. So if you go through a really shit time, a really difficult time in life, and you tell people about that, as soon as you talk about it, you're bringing all that up within yourself, and you're reinforcing how much of a negative thing that is, if you're talking about it in that way. And the second thing is, you start getting sympathy from people for that. And cancer is like, you know, if you're after sympathy, cancer's kind of the biggest draw card to attract sympathy, because everyone's like, well, everyone knows that cancer sucks and that it's hard. So everyone wants to give you sympathy, right? And I see sympathy as being like a bit of a drug. It's like, yeah, it can be helpful, and sometimes we really need a bit of sympathy. We need friends and family to come and give us a hug and tell us it's all going to be okay, and they feel sorry for us in this position, and we need that comfort, right? But I think it's a real trap that we can very easily get sucked into, getting addicted to sympathy, basically, where we just want to keep sharing our story with everyone that we meet.
Yeah.
Because that attracts more sympathy, and they start telling us, oh, it must have been really hard for you, and you know, oh, poor you, I'm sure things will be fine. Try and resist the temptation to share your story in terms of your story of misery. Try and change your story around, even if you've had the worst day possible, imaginable, and someone asks, hey, how are you doing? Now, if it's a close friend or family and you're in a position of really needing that sympathy, and that's where it can be a bit hard sometimes to know, but sometimes you need it, and you got to be real with people. You don't want to just lie to everyone and say, oh yeah, things are fantastic. Yeah. But my challenge to you is try and find something that has been great about the situation or the day that you're living, and try and talk more about that, or find other things to focus on rather than falling into that trap of just wanting to blurb your whole story about how much misery you're in,
and not falling into the trap of becoming defined by the disease or the condition or the injury, and creating a sense of identity around what that is.
Well, that's a whole
harder to get through.
That's probably like a whole nother conversation about the whole identity of things. But yeah, you're right. Like, you don't want to be known as, like, for me, going through cancer, I never wanted to be known as a cancer survivor. And I said that to people while I was going through it. I'm like, I don't want to survive. I don't want to just survive. Like, I want to conquer this thing. Yeah. I want to make cancer my bitch. And that was, and that's, yeah, because I kind of, yeah, I was like, that's not my identity to be some cancer victim or some cancer patient.
That's, yeah, thanks for sharing with that, Steve. Hoping, you know, people can take value from those points. But I suppose, you know, highlighting that this was stuff that you worked on, and it was about encountering the right people at the right time and having that support network around you. But yeah,
massive,
real keen for you just to touch on three, you know, books that were pivotal in you creating that mentality and that warrior mentality.
There's plenty of books that I can touch on, but probably three that really stand out is when I was first challenged with the whole responsibility sort of mindset of that. That was from a book called The Success Principles by Jack Canfield. Mm-hmm. And he's got like, it was heaps of different chapters and principles, just, of success. But his very first one was take 100% responsibility for your life. And that's where I kind of was challenged by that concept, and yeah, kind of had to take that on. But he's also, actually in that book, he's also got a great formula, which is E plus R equals O. And he says the E is the event, the R is the response to the event, and the O is the outcome. So it's like the outcome isn't actually determined by the event, it's determined only by that response. But anyway, he breaks that down, and it's really cool. The second book I recommend is a massive one in terms of keeping a great mindset and working on that, which is The Gratitude Effect by John Demartini. Mm-hmm. So in that book, he talks about gratitude, and basically kind of learning that discipline and habit of constantly looking at what you're grateful for. And he really explains that well, and how you can look at any situation, that every situation is balanced, but we often find ourselves in a stage of only seeing one side of those things. So either we're really highly infatuated by something and we only see the good, like when you first start dating someone and you only see their good points and there's nothing bad.
Yeah.
But then you break up with them and you only see their bad and nothing was ever good about them. So it's kind of like making that balance, but constantly being able to see, having something to be grateful for and being in that space.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty awesome book. I'd recommend, The Gratitude Effect. And the third one was Luke, one you and I were talking about earlier, which is The Slight Edge. A guy called Jeff Olson wrote that one, and that's basically, it was also a really cool concept that changed my life a lot in the way I think about a lot of my goals and things I'm working on. And it definitely applies to going through the cancer journey, which is kind of, rather than looking at things like, okay, tomorrow I'm going to like achieve all these things, I'm going to create this massive success in my life, like virtually overnight.
Yeah.
It's looking more at that slight edge of just focus on the 1%ers, like focus on that one little habit, that new little thing that you're going to do each day that builds up. And over a long period of time, you can obviously achieve an amazing result. And kind of comes down to, and points out that most of us tend to overestimate like the short term. So we think that we can achieve like life-changing results in a very short amount of time, but at the same time, we underestimate the long term. So, going to the gym a couple of times a week, we don't think that can change our life over a long period. We'd rather go to the gym twice a day, every day, because we want to get the ripped abs within 4 weeks. It's like, so that was a great book of putting that in perspective for me, and realizing that you don't need to conquer the world in one day. You just, those small changes in your day-to-day habits can lead into some pretty life-changing changes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like you say, we talked about that before the call, and it's something I talk with my patients a lot about. It's those 1%ers, not seeing it as a mountain to climb. You just sort of ask yourself each day, what's the 1%? What's the 1% change or activity or task I can implement today to get me 1% closer to my goal? Or seeing it as like, okay, I'm walking in this direction at the moment. If I can just turn 1 degree to either direction, over the course of 10 paces, it's not going to be much of a difference. But over the course of 100 paces, 500 paces, you're going to be in a completely different area, and hopefully it's your goals, whatever they are.
Such a simple, it's such a simple thing, but it's massive impact. I mean, I actually got introduced to that book when I was, I think it was like just after my stem cell transplant. I went through and kind of going through the long recovery of that, and it was in that time that I was struggling a lot mentally to keep on track, because I kind of just wanted to, get through this and start, achieving amazing things in my life straight away. So it was perfect timing for me to just be like, you know what, I can just take one day at a time and focus on this one thing.
In that book as well, he talks about, the little things that are easy to do. Things like being, active each day, like preparing meals and eating healthily, getting enough sleep, maintaining hydration, avoiding prolonged stress. All those little things are things that are also easy to do, but also not easy not to do. And that's why
not to do.
Yeah, that's why a lot of people don't do them, because and that's what the successful people tend to do. They tend to do those little things consistently over time, and it just builds up compound interest.
And if you're going through cancer, then some of those things are really, really not easy.
Made all the more harder, but made all the more important to do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Thanks so much, Steve. I know we looked at a sort of a 20 to 25, 30-minute conversation, but we've obviously gone over that, but it's all good. No, not at all. Don't apologize. It's all been awesome. And we always have heaps to talk about when we do catch up. So, thanks for your time. I wanted to do this with you today.
Thank you.
In hope of creating some value for people who are going through some tough times, or who know someone who you might be going through cancer treatment at the moment. The latest statistics say that 1 in 2 Australian men and women will be diagnosed with cancer by the age of 85. So we're really all at this point in time where we've, someone very close to us has been through cancer, unfortunately. So I think what you've talked about today is so important for the person going through the journey, but also as, people who we're going to be in people's, loved ones' support networks. So if we can help to create that mentality ourselves to help them create that mentality, it's, it's all going to be a positive thing. So yeah, thanks for sharing your journey and your experiences and the wisdom that you've picked up through that time.
No, thank you. My pleasure. It's do it again sometime.
Yeah, we should. We'll look at another way we can share some of your wisdom.
For both of us. Yeah,
absolutely. All right, mate. Well, thanks again, Steve, and we'll hopefully catch up soon.
Awesome, man. Cool.
Cheers. Take care.
Catch up. See ya.